All right.
In my 4-year-old's chair. It's like really low to the ground. Trying not to hunker.
You guys see that there? You guys see it in the chat window?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So if you guys can tweet that out, and then I'll hit record. We're live on YouTube right now, but we'll get started here in a couple seconds. Wait for people to join us. On YouTube with Kyle and Aseem. All right. Okay, welcome everybody. This is Coach Marc Hart with the Baskipedia podcast. I have Aseem Rastogi and Kyle Kavanaugh from Essential Coaching. How are you guys doing tonight?
Doing great. How are you, Marc?
I'm
Awesome.
great. Great always to talk hoop and talk to two guys that are really doing some great things on Twitter. You guys got your Monday night thing that you were doing tonight. Do you guys want to just kind of dive right in and briefly tell me about your 3-year journey? I believe you guys been working on this together for 3 years.
Yeah. Kyle, do you want to start or you want me to go first?
Go ahead, and I'll back clean up.
Yeah. So 3 years. It's kind of a funny story, I think, and it's probably no more salient then than it is now. We met on a Read and React webinar because we were looking for an answer in X's and O's and a system and something like that to try to help us become better coaches. And roundabout a couple of years later, or maybe a year later, we both sort of underwent a massive career change in getting let go from our jobs. But throughout that process, we stayed in constant contact. So we exchanged email addresses on that webinar, and that led to phone numbers. And I think we've talked every day for the better part of the last 3.5 years. And that was probably the best professional development either of us had ever been through, whether that's as a classroom teacher or whether that's as a coach. And it was things you couldn't get at a clinic. And I know we were talking before we went live about the Q&A part and how that doesn't exist. But our entire relationship was built on the Q&A part and running things by each other and sharing resources and really like diving into the nitty gritty of what it meant to be a great coach or what it meant to be a great educator of young people and using basketball as the vehicle to do that. And so I just feel really fortunate to have Kyle along with me on this journey. And the pandemic really sped some things up. And so we were fortunate to give clinics. I gave 2 of them. Kyle gave 1 of them. We gave clinics on that virtual coaches summit back in March. And we just decided, you know what, like if this thing works for us and it works for us and another guy that Kyle was friends with, and we're on a group chat together, maybe this can work for some people that we don't know. Let's try it. And 30 people later from those clinics, 30 people later, 19 weeks in, we're still going strong with our group cohorts, and we're in open enrollment actually starting tomorrow for our new communities to get started October 1st to bring this to the masses. So I think as a business teacher, we would call that proof of concept. People have come back for almost 5 months straight now. And we're building it with the chat. We're building it with some other different things. And we're going to be releasing some resources here pretty soon that hopefully will change some of the landscape. But Kyle, if you want to pick it up from there, man, and make it better than I just made it.
Yeah, well, Marc, thanks for having us on. Excited to finally get to do this and talk face to face. And we've communicated for a while through social media and Twitter and DMs and everything. And really loving everything that you're doing. And we're happy to be a small part of that tonight. Just to reiterate we met like most coaches do, trying to figure out the next best, greatest, sort of drill or X's and O's magic bullet. We kept searching and we both have had very paralleled paths. Now, Aseem and I probably couldn't be more different from who we're coaching and where. Aseem's been in Virginia and Boston coaching girls. I'm in Louisiana. I coach boys. But we realized we were sort of dealing with the same issues, the same problems, and they were all human related, human component based, and that what we would consider to be top of the pyramid stuff back there behind Aseem is that stuff wasn't really gonna ever come to fruition if we didn't have the foundation taken care of, which is what we call the human component, and then built upon program development, which is people development, player development, student development, leadership, character, and then getting into things like practice design, environmental design, how well we teach, checking for understanding, questioning strategies, and then eventually getting to the X's and O's piece. That, regardless of what we're doing technically, tactically, if we don't have the bottom of that pyramid taken care of, then we're going to ultimately fall short. And that's really how teams, reach their full potential. That's where you hear about teams overachieving. It's because they get really good at this stuff. They're really good at recruiting and building relationships with their players every single day. And so our vision, what we like to say is we want to create exponential generational change by creating the deepest connected coaching community in the world. And, Aseem is a classroom teacher. I'm a classroom teacher. I'm here teaching. I started coaching at Louisiana Tech as a graduate assistant when I was 22, got my first head job at 24 in high school, coached for 7 years, was let go, very fortunate to land in a really great spot that summer, and actually bounced back and won back-to-back state championships, and then made a really difficult decision about a year ago to leave coaching and just teach, and made a family move, and sort of going through that roller coaster of emotion, dealing with it, to the championships, to not even coaching anymore. You sort of kind of, got to what the essence of what life should be about, and sort of taking care of yourself and your family, and that regardless of whether we're being let go or we're winning championships, it's the relationships and those sort of memories that last. And I got a text actually from one of my Innsbruck kids the other day and just said, "Coach, you crossed my mind. Hope everything's going good. Just want to know, we just dealt with Hurricane Laura here in Louisiana, and been without power, and got real life world things happening around us. And it, at the end of the day, we didn't talk about how many points we scored or that particular game or even the championship. It was, let me know you're okay. Let me know that you're doing okay, physically, mentally, emotionally. And that really is what it comes down to. So we want to create that change with our kids. But what we've realized is that we can reach more of those kids by working with coaches. So in order to make that exponential generational change, we want to work with coaches who want to work with their players. And then, as Aseem alluded to, that we sort of piloted the last 5 months or so, and looking now to expand is honestly the deepest connected coaching community in the world. And that sounds very lofty, especially for just a couple of guys that most people probably haven't heard of. I like to say very fortunate to do those summit clinics. I mean, I without a doubt, I was the least famous person on that clinic. But I kind of wore that with a badge of honor because I think it made me the most relatable guy in that clinic. Because if you're a junior high coach in the middle of Kansas, or you're struggling to get your team's first win, or you're dealing with real problems because you've got one gym, or half of your athletes play football and you get one practice before you get to play a game, those sorts of real life things that are difficult to fix in a clinic with some great D1 X's and O's because you don't have their players. That's where we feel like we can really make our impact. And so that's how we got here. The pandemic, for all it's taken away from us, it sort of helped birth Essential Coaching. It gave us the time and the sort of sped a lot of this up because we had been talking about it for a long time, but we finally had the time to do something about it. And the best part is the coaches we've been working with, now that things are getting a little bit more normal for some folks, they're worried about keeping our cohorts going. They're worried about keeping our calls going. And that lets us know that we've done some good work and that we're ramping people.
Can't hear you.
Great. All right.
There we
Audio. Let's
Gotcha.
just go to, that's better probably anyways. So we're both kind of going on the same path. System basketball for me got built during COVID, with just a group of guys that went on a Zoom call, not even a Zoom call. We were on a chat, like an old school chat doing system basketball stuff. And I said, can we take this to human interaction? And then we had the free Zoom where we got talking for 3.5 hours. So every 40 minutes when you drop, we called back in, and then it got, hey, well, does someone want to do a clinic? And then all the big system coaches started coming. And then they said, hey, we'll do one. And then then I got people going, well, can you do this topic? Can you do that topic? So mine's kind of grown, and I've had everything. And so that's where I've kind of grown to like what you guys are doing, and building stuff, because I was always the guy that would go to the biggest clinic at Nike, the Nike clinic. If you've ever been to that one,
I've been there twice.
I'm in California, so it's a 4-hour drive from me. So it was an excuse to almost say I'm going to a coach's clinic, to be quite honest. I went there for about 20 straight years, and back in the day, you used to be able to record it. When it was at Bally's in Paris, and I'd be the coach that'd be there for the first speaker on Friday evening, on the top with my recorder, and to talk about what Kyle's saying, that he was the least famous. Typically, the guy that I had never heard of was the guy I learned the most from on those speaks. I mean, no offense to whatever you want to call him, the celebrity coach that does the clinics. Most people are there to see them, but they're going to give you the generic recruit a better player or whatever answer. So that's kind of my thing too, is I'm more trying to be appealing towards the lesser known coach to help them build a platform for the lesser known coaches to help them build a portfolio, if you will. So what is one thing, guys, and this could be for both of you or one of you can take it, that you wish you would have known that you know today when you started out in this journey of coaching basketball? Aseem, you want to
I think foundationally, like for me, just talking about being the least famous guy in the room, like I didn't even play high school basketball. I got cut from every team I tried out for. There was no market for a 5'9" overweight Indian guy with no skills. I just didn't know I wasn't very good until I was told I wasn't very good, right? Because growing up, like you feel like you're going to be, you have that in your mind. Like, yeah, I can compete with those guys. No, I couldn't. But I think that having the passion for the game and having the passion for people, that can drive you forward more than any playing experience you could ever have. And I wear that as a badge of honor that I didn't play, because then I had to learn everything from scratch. And I didn't have, like, I went to those Nike clinics and I was like, oh yeah, cool. Sean Miller's here. I'm going to use his last second out of bounds play with my freshman boys team. It ain't going to work. Right. So it was more about the relationship part and that human component behind Kyle there. Like that is something that as a young coach, and again, I'm only 32. So like, I'm still, I guess, a young coach. I don't know. I've been coaching since I was like 16 because I got cut from every team I tried out for. Like you out of necessity, I started coaching and refereeing, but that human component and the authenticity and the communication, learning those skills at an early age and then implementing those things and not worrying so much about like what other people think, what wins, losses, whatever, all of that stuff fades to dust eventually. I mean, like John Thompson just passed away last night, and you notice like people are touting his resume because it's amazing. But the most shared clip of him is of Allen Iverson crying at his Hall of Fame speech, saying, "This man changed my life by taking a chance on me."
Yeah. And take that a step.
Right. Take that a step further. Like, what are your players going to say?
Allen Iverson's tweet today has gone viral and about saying, "Thank you, coach. You saved my life."
Right. And again, like none of us, I think, I mean, that takes a special coach to begin with to get to where John Thompson was, but you don't have to be at Georgetown to have that same impact.
I watched my share of games growing up as a young buck at 9 a.m. in the morning on the West Coast, watching Big East basketball with
Mm-hmm.
Alonzo Mourning, Patrick Ewing, the short shorts of North Carolina.
Yeah.
The short shorts of that day, man. That's the 80s. I mean, that was.
They're coming back though. You look at Kelly Oubre Jr., man. He's bringing them back.
Yeah.
They're trying.
I mean, you coach girls. I don't know what it is. They like to tuck that bottom of that short underneath.
Asia Wilson and Sophie Cunningham's got that. They got that on lock. That's the new style. But
That's
but ultimately, like, again, that's that human component, and like really, really, if we can get to the point where that becomes what coaches are evaluated on and how coaches are educated in this country, worldwide, of how to connect with people. And really, coaches are excellent at it, but there's things that get in the way. And that was why we did our chat tonight on evaluation. And we noticed there was a lot of coaches lurking, but they wouldn't get into it because they don't know how they're evaluated and they don't want their ADs to get mad.
Yeah, I was in there and I was like, how do I answer those questions? I'm gonna be honest to you guys. I was like, those are valid questions that you go look at in your soul and go, I better start getting some answers for those. So
right. So that in a long story short, that's what I wish I had known, is the answer to those questions and how to align what I think is right with what's out there externally that's going to fulfill me. Right. But you can't really go through that until you've gone through, like, you can't skip that process either. Our job is to try to make that a little easier to help you understand that internal voice. And as a young coach, like, I wish that's one thing I would have known. Kyle, I'm curious to know what yours is.
I got a question, Kyle. Yeah, you want to elaborate on that? Go ahead, and then if not, I have another question for you.
Yeah, real quick, to echo what Aseem is saying, though, like, that's sort of why we do the chat. Like, we pride ourselves. It's really difficult to write those questions, and it's really difficult to answer them, but that's why we ask them, and that's really like why we exist. Is we sort of, and this might be a little backwards, especially if you're, viewing it from a Twitter analytical side of like how many engagements and retweets, but we sort of take pride in the fact that it is difficult for people to jump in that chat because they don't know. But that's why we exist, is to help you figure out what your solution is going to be to those questions. And it's not to say we know those answers, because we don't know your context. And I have a difficult time answering those questions, but that's why we say that they're tough, they're relevant, and they're necessary, because those are the questions that's really going to stretch us beyond our limits and how we're actually going to get better to better serve our kids. But real quick, I want to throw this out there too. I'm going to go a little bit to the top of the pyramid. What I wish I would have known when it came to like practice design. And this is where I give a shout out to Culver Basketball Immersion. We got a chance to do some things with Chris and work with him and be mentored by him a little bit, and changing just the idea behind like, why do we practice the way we practice, and going more random versus block. And the thing is that that I don't really understand what took me so long to do that, is I was already doing that in the classroom.
Yeah.
I was already using flipping the Bloom's pyramid and starting more with this create mindset to get to retention, as opposed to starting with like technique or facts. And it worked in the classroom, but for some reason I didn't do that in the gym. And I was so worried about having like the newest, latest, greatest like cone or med ball or tennis ball drill, like all those things that must look fancy in practice, but then didn't translate to the game. And I sort of prided myself on how militaristic my practices were. We looked like a machine, we were well oiled, and then we'd go to a game and we couldn't handle any situation that was thrown at us. And that's where I feel like I did my teams a really big disservice early on, because I was trying to do what my coach did back in the the 90s and the early 2000s, and was trying to do what I saw on, Instagram didn't exist back then, but just trying to emulate what I thought good coaching was. And you don't really know what good coaching is until you get to what is behind us and what John Thompson really did truly stand for a guy like Allen Iverson. It wasn't the defense or the press or the offense that has him talking about a man like that, at his Hall of Fame or after his passing. So I would piggyback off of what Aseem said about the human component piece, but then also the human component piece and how we're teaching our kids and what we're teaching them and sort of the environment that we're setting up. Questioning strategies, feedback strategies, checking for understanding, taking all the things that we're really good at as teachers and then implementing that into the gym, as opposed to just plug and play things into a practice plan. You know, defensive slides, 3-man weave, shoehorn shooting drill, elbow to elbow shooting, 5-on-5 scrimmage, call it a day, let's go home. Oh, we got beat by 30 again. Well, I don't understand. I did practice the way I've always done practice, you know, and sort of coming to that realization. And again, getting let go was a big part of that. It sort of makes you rethink everything, because you question every single decision you've ever made, you know, since the beginning of time when something like that happens. And that was a good thing, I would think, for both of us.
No doubt.
You guys have kind of touched on some of it, but what do you guys, Kyle, I'll let you go with this one. What is your biggest failure in coaching and what did you learn from it?
Oof. Well, I guess from the teaching standpoint, what I was just talking about was worrying so much about what people thought a great job I was doing, whether that be in practice or games. Like, it was one thing if my kids didn't play very well or we got beat or, you know, whatever the case may be, but I wanted people to walk out of there and be like, well, Coach Cav knew what he was doing. He was up standing, he was hooping and hollering, he's running up down the sideline, ripping the jacket off, you know, spinning around, getting all, you know, into it. Like, man, he's really doing his job. Like, he's doing his part. And I cared so much about what other people were thinking about me in those terms that it really became a lot more self-serving. And it was more about me than it was about my kids. And I sort of fast forward that to when I was at Simsboro and we had won our first championship and we're really a shoe-in to win the second one. We'd only lost one kid off of that team. And we were using Lead 'em Up, and we had, you know, sort of built the culture and convinced these guys that it wasn't just talent alone that was going to get it done. There was something missing. We had to have more of that insular family piece, the culture piece, but also it goes along with all of that. And then I sort of reverted back to my old self and got so concerned about the numbers and the statistics. And, you know, you're a system guy, right? Like, that's what I like. We led the state in points, and I was the quote unquote offensive coordinator. And so I thought, well, we're going to break every single record the state's ever seen. Like, that was sort of what I was kind of envisioning. And so all of my conversations with my players turned to that. It wasn't about the relationship piece anymore. It wasn't about, you know, who they were as students or athletes or people. It was about, well, we need to get this taken care of in practice because I think we can average triple digits this year, and we didn't get that done today in practice, and that's why we're going to fail. And oddly enough, I got a text message from a player after a game. We were like 13-1, I think, before Christmas. I mean, we were absolutely destroying everybody, but it felt like we were losing. And got a text from a player, Gianni was one of our 2 seniors, and he basically called me out and was like, look, you preached all this stuff last year about family and trust and culture and leadership and relationships and all of those things, and we bought into that and we won, and now here you are getting away from that. You know, it's just not fun anymore. Like, you've changed, you're not the same person, we're not having the same types of conversations, we're not in the anymore. Everything that we talk about is about basketball. It's not about who we are as people. And it was kind of like I'd gotten away from what I sold them on. But it took a player, we talk about wanting to be player led, you know, it took the player to get the coach back on track. And I would say, you know, and that was only just a couple of years ago that happened. So you're all saying all of the things that I've done poorly, and then learning through all that, you're still likely to make, you know, a similar mistake or get caught up in the external formulas and sort of get tripped up by what other people are saying or thinking, or, you know, all of a sudden you go from being fired and championships. It's like, okay, well, I have a chip on my shoulder. I've got something to prove. I'm going to show you guys I know how to coach. Watch me break records. Watch me do this. Watch me do that. And all of a sudden it was me, and had gotten away from that team aspect. And so I would say, if as far as biggest failures go, that would be it. It would be the multiple points throughout my coaching career that it became about my coaching career, not about my kids playing careers
Mhm.
and about their experience. It was more about me, when in reality, I could coach for 40 years. Those kids are only going to get 4. So the time that they have should be more valuable to them, because I'm going to get to do this over again where they're not. And so not putting their experience first, I would say, would be the, probably my biggest failure.
You want to elaborate, Aseem, or you good?
I mean, I in a very similar vein, my biggest failure was capitulating to the wants of those external formulas from people who really shouldn't have had any sort of influence at all, whether that was parents, whether that was, administrators who didn't get it, whatever, and robbing the kids who were really in it for the right reasons of the best experience possible, because I thought I had to do something to keep my job. And knowing that, like, hey, you know what? I got let go anyway. My contract didn't get renewed. I didn't get let go. My contract didn't get renewed. Why? I don't know. They wouldn't tell me. So if that's the end all that's going to happen, and I still like violated my own values, thinking that was going to help me keep my job, we call that stacking the deck. Like, we want to stack the deck to where even if the eventuality is that you're not going to get your contract renewed, that's fine. At least you did things above board the right way so that you can sleep at night. And it wasn't until I got a job at the rival school after getting let go after 3 years at my alma mater as the head girls basketball coach. And I had a chance to start over there, and they wanted me to be there. And I had all of those external formulas were removed. And I was able to coach like myself. And we had a tremendous amount of success, but all of those kids had something to look fondly back on about their experience because we did it the right way. And that's, so my biggest regret, kind of in the same vein as Kyle, is like, I sacrificed myself too much for the wrong thing because I thought I needed to do that to keep my job. And I didn't keep my job anyway. So it really taught me, like, hey, be true to yourself, do what you're supposed to do, invest in the relationships, and let the chips fall where they may.
Okay. So you guys have been coaching for a little bit or studying the game a little bit here. Who are the people that have been most influential in your coaching career?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll jump in first. I think Adam Bradley, number one, he's the founder of Lead 'em Up. Both Kyle and I are regional coaches for Lead 'em Up too. So being able to work with him since 2015, I believe we were the first program in Virginia to sign on with Lead 'em Up when it was a brand new company. And just the mentorship from him has been amazing in terms of building sort of my philosophy on how we want to treat people and what leadership and character actually is in a program. On the basketball side, definitely Chris Oliver, and Brian McCormick. Like, I think Brian McCormick sometimes gets a bad rap, but that dude is brilliant. And I would not be half the coach I am today without his influence. Whether he knows that or not, I don't know. I frankly don't think he would even care, but I have to say it to anybody who's watching. Like, Brian McCormick was instrumental in my development as a coach.
Brian will know. I have Brian coming on a future clinic, so
perfect. There we go. Yeah.
So,
So definitely and again, like, I think
I'll let him know for you.
There you go. So, I mean, I think obviously, look, those two guys, like Brian McCormick and Chris Oliver, have become really, really popular here in the last last several years. But ultimately, like, good ideas become popular, or they should. So I know those are two very mainstream answers, and not some random or whatever. But I don't know. There's not too many. Ultimately, there's been more negative influences on my coaching than positive influences, if that tells you anything. I learned a lot about how not to do things. And this was a discussion we had in one of our cohorts about, like, well, how did you learn how to do the right thing? We learn a lot about, like, what not to do, right? But how do we learn what to do? And so I think those guys really were instrumental in that. And then coupling that with the negative influences in my coaching life, at least, have really, and then obviously I got to mention my guy, Kyle. You know, that was like 3.5 years of a clinic every single day. You know, and I couldn't do it without him.
Kyle?
Well, we're going to be pretty aligned here. I mean, Aseem's been the best thought partner I've ever had. We like to say it's a peer-reviewed process. That's how you really get better, because one of my favorite quotes that I actually had this on my board in my classroom. I teach 7th grade science. Learning is experience. Everything else is just information. Like, you have to learn by doing. You have to be in the middle of that. And that really is kind of the crux of what the essential coaching experience is to be about. Is it's about you. It's about your pathway, your solutions. What worked for Aseem, what worked for Kyle necessarily. You know, what worked might necessarily work for Aseem, but we're all dealing with similar issues. But it's about your context and your ground zero, and how we figure out how to your specific situation, even though we might almost not similar. And so being a part of that, which is very difficult to do off of a DVD or a PDF or a clinic or those types of things, like, you have to have those people in your life, that small group that you can talk to every single day. And Aseem's been that guy for me for 3 years, no doubt. I mean, I would say McCormick as well. Definitely Chris Oliver, through a lot of the technical, tactical side, the decision-making training. I've never met him or anything like that, but the research from Dr. Shane Pill on game sense approach, and again, sort of tying in like my classroom philosophy with my on court philosophy. He had a huge impact on that as well. But then I would also say that, Aseem, we kind of joke about this, like, it seems like I got cut from every team. I was in the band. Like, I played high school basketball, but I went to college on a music scholarship. And I actually learned more from my college band director, Jim Rompkin, than I did from probably any coach that I ever played for. And music and basketball have their parallels. There are some things that are obviously a lot different, but when you talk about being a part of something much bigger than yourself, where you learn those sorts of traits that coaches always talk about, respect, humility, communication, toughness, humility, all of those things, like, that's a big part of fitting in your one tiny little role into something much bigger than yourself, to where you've got to be dang near perfect, every single time it's your turn to do something. And one of the first lessons I got was in a rehearsal, where I was asked to try to, play something for him, and I wasn't prepared. And he sort of took that opportunity in front of the other 150 people, in the room, and was like, "Look, rehearsal is our time, not your time. When we come here, it's about putting all of us together and making music together." And, I mean, isn't that really what we hope that our players would do? You need to go work on these aspects of your game outside of practice time. If you're coming into practice to then try to get better, you're behind. And so what sort of system or climate do we have set in place where our kids understand that, know that, and sort of put that into practice? And so I learned a ton. I got some of my very first leadership opportunities in that. We had a fraternity service organization, and getting to be the vice president of that, and just the opportunity to influence people and be around that. Like, I got more from my music experience, and I would say that I've had more influence from my music background onto my coaching and teaching than anybody would probably care to know about or think.
So do you guys feel like every state has their parameters of what you have to be a coach? Like, you have to have PR and basic background checks and stuff like that. But they don't really help you, like what you guys are trying to do with the relationship part. Do you think that's lacking in high school, especially, Kyle, since you coached high school?
Yeah, I mean, again, I sort of,
you got what is some of the other organizations we have, like Positive Coaching Alliance, and those are very similar organizations, but those are just new.
those are just
So
happened in the last like 5 years. Like,
yeah, so what I would say is I think that there's a difference between getting a certification to say you did it and actually doing the work. And like I coached high school for 4 years. Like I was a high school head coach for 4 years. I was an assistant before that. Like we had to do the NFHS like
yep.
principles of coaching course that was free, and you just click through it and you get your certificate and you're good to go. What we're really trying to do, and that's where this pyramid comes in handy, is it's not just the relationship part, that's what builds the rest of it. And so really understanding, and we just had a conversation on the phone after our chat about creating some of those resources and really like legitimizing it to where coaches, here's what's in your interview portfolio. Coaches, here's what you say you want to do. Administrators, here's how you can evaluate them on what they said they were going to do. But a lot of coaches don't know, especially young coaches. But I would say most coaches don't know fully how to align all of that stuff and go up that pyramid from the human component to program development to practice design and environment to the X's and O's, and really like stack the layers on top of each other without feeling like I got to go grab this PDF over here. I got to go watch this video over here. I got to go do this over here. All of that stuff exists to help you, but the filter through which you see it is really how you coach.
Mm-hmm.
But what the narrative has been, and again, it speaks to our conversation before, like 20 years in a row going to that Nike clinic thinking you're going to get something different. No, I mean, look, I went to it. Kyle, you've been to those. I mean, we've all been to them because that's what you thought you were supposed to do. We call that an external formula at Essential Coaching. It's because somebody else said, hey, this is what you're supposed to do. This is how I learned. This is how I went and got better. Next thing you know, you have a huge plastic tote full of Championship Productions DVDs, and you don't know what to do with them. Right? So instead, take that money, take that time, and really go through this process, our RACA pathway, reflection, awareness, clarity, and alignment, to achieve congruence in what you want to do and what's happening. And once you get to that point, you'll find that you're more fulfilled, but you'll just find that your headspace is way more clear as a coach. I mean, you think about like all the things that we have to deal with on a daily basis. If we knew, hey, I've got a system for that. Like I feel like Elizabeth Warren sometimes, like, hey, I got a plan for that. Hey, I got a system for that. Hey, we can do this, right? It's not that this is like a cut and dry solution. It is your solution. And that's where I think those other organizations, as great as they are, listen, PCA does some great work. I've seen some of their stuff. I've used some of their stuff in the past. They do some great work. But the problem is nobody creates your solution except for you. Our job as holistic development allies is to help you do that. And that's where we're different. It's sort of our blessing and our curse is that we can't PDF this and just give it to you and say, here, go do this. You have to talk it out. You have to come to those conclusions. And what we found is we have one-on-one calls with some of our members, and we literally say like 3 words over an hour and a half because they're just going. And they come to that conclusion on their own. But realistically, like how many head coaches can talk to their assistants about this stuff? How many head coaches can walk into their AD's office and say, I don't really know how to do this? That's a recipe for getting let go. That's a recipe for losing some trust. And there's some external formulas there too. You know, like we mentioned, there's people who couldn't jump into our chat tonight because they just don't have the answer to those questions. Well, if they don't have the answer to those questions, how can they reasonably expect to be successful at their job? Right. Yeah. So it's about creating that entire pyramid. It's not just like the human component is what drives everything, but being able to stack those things on top of each other and align top to bottom, your program, your expectations, the standards in your program, your values, your mission, your everything about your program, about where you are, to your personal beliefs, to the beliefs of the institution, and then creating a holistic program that serves students in a way that can create that generational exponential change. That's what we're trying to do. And I just don't think that any of those other programs, they don't meet that because it's more about, hey, here's a passive product, pay your $9.99, here's your certification. We don't really have anything to do with it. You go do it on your own. And no institution that I know of, and Kyle, you can correct me if I'm wrong, puts the human first.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we are very, very different. We put the human part first. It's not the afterthought that gets thrown in like, oh yeah, and culture, oh yeah, and climate, oh yeah, and we talked about relationships. No, that's what drives everything else.
So everything's live with you guys on like Zoom sessions?
Yep, everything.
Yep.
Everything's live, and then we have a Slack community where we have all of our members in there. We probably have, I don't know, 8 or 9 different channels for different stuff. It's active every day. I mean, our members are sharing resources with each other. They're setting up their own calls with each other. Like, hey, I want to learn about your 2-3 zone defense. Great, take it. I don't really care about that. You guys go on and do it. That's totally fine. You know, and we value that, because that's what we're trying to do, is create that deepest connected coaching community in the world. And so we're living that. We have pro coaches in Europe. We have youth coaches in the US. We have coaches in Kenya. We're actually have a call with our coach in Kenya tomorrow, and I think we're expecting hopefully some good news about expanding more into Africa, just to create, again, this exponential generational change, not just in the country, not just in Boston or in Ruston, but in the whole world. And we can do that through coaching, and it doesn't matter what the sport is.
So you guys got open enrollment tomorrow. So how do they do that?
So the best thing to do is to go to the website, www.essential-coaching.net. Subscribe, get on the mailing list. That's what we like to get people to do first, because that's going to get you. We send out content a couple times a week. Excuse me. Free resources here and there, blog posts, new content ideas, that sort of stuff. And so that's just the easiest way to sort of get us connected the first time. And then you just fill out that contact form and you say, hey, I'm interested, I'm ready to enroll. We have our two community platforms, the preferred, which is what everybody in right now, that's what the open enrollment is for tomorrow. That is our small group cohorts. And when we say small groups, we mean small. There's never anybody more than 5 or 6 coaches in those groups, because again, learning is experience. Like, you have to be in the middle of that. And so you need to have the adequate time and platform to speak, to share, to be in the middle of all of that. And so we keep those things intentionally small, which Aseem said a minute ago, it's sort of the blessing and the curse. There's only so many hours in a day, and only so many of those calls you can have, but we're great with that. We're fine with that. That's where we think sort of the sauce is. And so you can enroll into that preferred community. Those will actually be starting in October. So the open enrollment period is for the month of September. Those are on a 3-month subscription. And then we'll do open enrollment again in December. And so these will transition in each quarter of the year that we're looking to add to the existing communities. It'll grow sort of by block within that, to add to the community that we've been working with for the last, I think it's been 4.5 months or so. And so, or there's the premium community, which would be the small group cohort access. But then you would also get what we're doing right now, one V2s with me and Aseem, private text access with us, and then be able to set up some one-on-one advocacy calls on top of the small group cohorts. And the other thing that we're finding that coaches are really interested in, for head coaches out there, is staff upgrades, where we'll do the one-on-one, but upgrade your staff, and then your staff becomes your cohort. Because what we sort of find is that, coaches locally, like Aseem said, it's difficult for them to have that conversation with the coach that they're going to play twice later in the year, who might be coming after their job or might be recruiting some of those same players. We've heard from D1 assistants where they're like, look, this is a very cutthroat business. So I don't mind talking to you guys, but I don't know if I kind of want my stuff out there in the cohort group, because I don't want them coming after a kid that I talk about or something like that. And we understand, that is what it is. So we're trying to set it up to where you get what you need. And then we can sort of accommodate you as best we possibly can. So we have those two platforms, but the open enrollment is for that preferred community, that small group cohort. And so it's kind of like, my wife is in the medical field and been to nursing school and NP school. And it's kind of like that, where you kind of join that group and you go through each semester by semester. And so as we go through our topics, as we sort of break down our walls and barriers with you, you'll go through that with this group. And, you know, we like to say that coaching is very lonely. The weight of coaching is very heavy. And it's an amazing value to have people that can go through that with you and sort of take some of that weight off of you, level some of that weight off. And we've just found that, you know, we hear from our coaches every week when we have our calls that, man, I would be freaking out so bad right now if I hadn't been doing this. Or man, if I wasn't on this call right now, I've got this happening tomorrow. I'd be freaking out right now, you know, but because I've got you guys in my corner and we're working through and talking through this stuff, I'm going to sleep tonight. And that really is one of the best compliments that we can get, is that coaches feel less stressed, they're more fulfilled, and they can get that night's sleep, meaning that when they get home from work, they can be themselves, they can spend time with family, they can be that dad or that wife or, you know, that partner to be who they need to be in that moment, and then not bring work home with them, and then continuing that cycle of then taking home with them to work. And that really is, like I said, we hear that every week from our coaches, and I think that's the best compliment that we can probably get.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, these guys really helped me tonight with the human component with Essential Coaching. Guys, check out what they're doing. Aseem, Kyle, let them know where they can find you on Twitter.
Yeah, so my Twitter is at Rastogi_Aseem. That's RAST as in Tom OGI_Aseem ASEEM.
And I think it's at Kyle Kavanaugh, right?
Mine is actually at Coach K424. So y'all all now know when my birthday is, so feel free to drop me something in late April. But yeah, we're real active on Twitter. Our DMs are always open. We actually do a lot of communicating with coaches through DMs, and so we love getting new follows. We'll hit you. You know, we're, like I said, we are far from big time, man. We are reachable, we are accessible, and that's the way we like it, because we want to be as relevant as possible to those that we can help. And again, that includes, you know, pre-K coaches, youth coaches, all the way up to, we've got D2 head coaches in our group to you know, European pro men's clubs. So hit us up. We'd love to have a conversation.
You guys remind me of me and one of my buddies, Coach Kurt Gelsdorf. You guys are no fluff, just content. We're not story time. We just try to get good stuff to people to try to help them grow at their craft. I mean, that's whether you're doing it X's and O's wise or the human component wise. What's the old saying, guys? It's not the X's and O's, it's the Jimmys and the Joes, right? So right. I think as we grow in our coaching careers, I've done this 20 something years, the X's and O's become less and less, even though we're still looking for that, even though we'll still go to that Nike clinic, baby, and look for that
right.
that OB play. But I appreciate you guys coming on. You guys keep doing great things. Stay healthy. I know you just were hit hard in Louisiana again. Not that state hasn't come through enough with tornadoes.
We appreciate that. Yeah. We've dealt with 3 sort of once in a lifetime events the last year and a half here. But hey, our community is strong. They're resilient, and it's you know, we sort of in a way kind of joke like, hey, when we get hit with something like that, it brings out the best of us, and that's really what we need to see right now. And so it's you know, in a lot of ways it ends up being a silver lining and a good thing, because we get to see kind of who we truly are, and who our neighbors are. And so and just because we're talking about it, real quick shout out to the linemen and first responders and everybody that's gotten our town back up. We got a lot of people that will be without power, water, internet. I'm one of the lucky ones. We got internet and power back finally yesterday, so we could get to do this. And but we've actually got some friends staying at the house with us right now, which is why I'm quarantined in my daughter's bedroom, sitting in her little chair. So the background helps. But yeah, we appreciate you mentioning that, and you know, we appreciate you letting us have on here, man. This has been great.
Yeah, no, I mean, you could take COVID as a negative, but I think you guys, myself, several others have taken it to help others and to build stuff and to build platforms for people to help people. And more people are willing to share now about the game of basketball.
No doubt.
It amazes me now that the respect level of listening to junior high guys on a virtual clinic, whether you're a D1 professional, people are just listening to everybody, learning. I think a lot of it was there was nothing else to do and I needed to have some time, and it filled the basketball void. But it got people thinking about what's really important in the basketball thing, and it's the kids we coach. It's not,
No doubt.
It's not the line, it's not the X, it's not the O. It's the human, like what you guys harp on, the human component. So if I can do anything to help you guys, don't feel free to ask. Appreciate you guys coming on to the Baskipedia podcast.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having us, Marc. This was great. And right back at you. If there's anything we can do, please let us know.
Okay, guys, have a great one. We'll talk soon.
No doubt. You too.
Yes,
Thanks,
sir. Have a
Marc.
good one. Thanks.